Okay, very good afternoon to all of you. And I hope you have read about national income accounting, what we had discussed in last two classes. So now today we are going to discuss about national income accounting, basically determination of income and output and employment. Okay. So what we have shared is about how to calculate national income, what are the different concepts of GDP and national income concepts. And then we had calculated by three methods of national income. Three methods are output method, income method, and expenditure method. Now, those who have studied economics, have you heard about uh, J.M. Keynes, John Maynard Keynes? Have you heard about him? He's considered as a father of macroeconomics. So today what we are going to share is about that how national income, output and employment is decided. So what we have shared till now is about how to calculate national income, and who takes care about calculation of national income or the compilation of national income is by Central Statistical Organization and Ministry of Statistical Program and Implementation. So today we are going to share about how countries' national income, employment and output is decided. What are the different ways through which it can be calculated? Okay. And we had discussed last class about circular flow. Yes, we had shared about circular flow. So we had shared two sectors basically, the consumption created by households and the corporate. Corporate, they produce goods and services, and consumers, they consume these goods and services. Now, once the corporate, they produce goods and services, they require for this production, they require factors of production. And factors of production are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. And these factors of production, those who contribute for the production of goods and services, they get paid in return. And this, they get factor payments. And these factor payments can be in the form of labor, rent, interest, profits, and wages and salaries. So this income, this we had calculated through income method. And then these factors of production, they go for spending on goods and services. So there are different factors of production which goes for spending. That is about, we had shared expenditure method, that is consumption plus investment plus government expenditure and net exports. That is exports minus imports. So this is what we had shared is the expenditure method. And what do we get through expenditure method? We get GDP at market price. And how do we calculate national income? National income is NNP at factor cost. And you know, we had discussed last class about the three mantras of conversion. So from gross to net, you go for deducting depreciation. Domestic to national, you add net factor income from abroad. And from market price to factor cost, we deduct net indirect taxes. So this is what we had discussed last class. And we had also discussed output method. Output method of calculating national income. That is, you get gross value added at market price. And how do you get it? By value of output minus intermediate consumption. Okay, so this is what we had discussed last class. And I hope you have solved some numerical and you know how to solve these numericals based on the concept of national income accounting. Now today we are going to discuss about not only how the national income is determined, but we are also going to discuss about how the output of the country is determined, how much the output should be, how much should be the production in the country, and how it leads to employment in the country. When the employment in the country will increase, when the employment will decrease, when the output in the country will increase, how national income plays role in this. Okay, so national income of the country, how it plays role in the output and employment determination. We will be talking about sectors, 2-sector model, 3-sector model, and 4-sector model. But before that, who is Keynes and why the chapter has been named as Keynesian theory of determination of national income? So have you heard about Great Depression, 1930s Great Depression? So before talking about that, what are the objectives of this chapter? So first we will be defining about Keynes' concept of equilibrium. Keynes' concept of equilibrium. Equilibrium basically is the equilibrium between aggregate demand and aggregate supply in the economy. And what is aggregate demand? Aggregate demand is the total demand created in the economy. And what is aggregate supply? Is the total output of the country. Okay, so aggregate supply depicts about output, total output in the country, and aggregate demand depicts about total aggregate demand created by consumers, by corporate, by government, and net exports. Okay, so aggregate demand created by different players in the economy and aggregate supply. And the point at which aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply, that's the condition of equilibrium. So this is what we will be sharing today. Then next is about components of aggregate expenditure. What are the different components of aggregate expenditure? In a two-sector model, three-sector model, and a four-sector model. When we talk about two-sector model, means we are talking only about households and corporate. Okay, that is C is for the consumption created by households, and I is investments created by corporate. Okay, so we will be talking about corporate consumption, consumers, consumption, household, and corporate investment. That is two-sector model. Three-sector model would be when we'll include government. So government also goes for spending on consumption and investments. The three-sector model takes care about households, corporate, and government. And the four-sector model takes care about corporate, household, government, and rest of the world. That is exports and imports. That is net exports. So we take care about all these four in the four-sector model. In two-sector model, we only take care about consumption and investment. And we'll start with two-sector model because it becomes easy for you to understand that what is the basic fundamental of equilibrium or the circular flow in the economy. Then the next thing what we will be sharing in next two classes will be national income determination, how the income is determined in the two-sector, how the national income is determined in two-sector, three-sector, and four-sector. So we will not only be talking about income, but we will be also talking about output and employment in the country. And then what is the concept of multiplier? Multiplier means which multiplies. So consumption multiplier, investment multiplier that we will be sharing. And then the aggregate demand, aggregate income. Okay, what are the determinants of aggregate income? So this will be shared in the next session. Today we'll be talking about this. Who is Keynes? Why he has been given so much importance? Then what is the concept of two-sector model, three-sector and four-sector model? How the income is determined in these sectors? Okay, multiplier and other components we will be discussing in the next class. So these are different components of this chapter. First is determination of national income, which will be shared with respect to Keynesian theory of national income, Keynes theory of determination of national income, two-sector model, three-sector, the investment multipliers, three-sector model, and the four-sector model. So to first and the foremost to start with. Now, any economy goes through different stages. Okay, so different stages where the demand. See what happens if the aggregate demand increases in the country. Aggregate demand increases means we the consumers, we demand more. Corporate, they invest. Government goes for spending and investments, and net exports of the country, increases. So imagine if country's consumption is increasing, investment is increasing, government is spending on goods and services and investments, more flyovers, roads, infrastructure government is creating, and exports of the country is increasing. What will happen? What will happen in the country? You, the consumer, you demand more. That means corporate will produce more. Okay, so you create demand and corporate will be producing more. Once the corporate start producing more, that means they will be employing more people. So employment will increase, so corporate production increases, output increases, employment increases. Once employment increases means income will increase. Income increases means you'll spend more, so consumption will increase. Okay, this should be good for the economy because it is creating more income, it is creating more job, it is creating more investments in the economy, and the country will grow. But if consumption demand decreases, you the consumers, you do not demand. Your consumption demand, what happened during COVID? You have seen the consumption demand decrease. You were not demanding goods the way you are demanding today. So the consumption demand decreases. So if you do not consume, then corporate will not produce. The corporate are not producing means output will decrease. If output decreases means employment will decrease. Employment decreases means income will decrease. So income will decrease. If income decreases means you will consume less. And if you will consume less, that means corporate will be producing less. So this goes on, this goes on. And if this goes on for a longer period of time, what will happen? Country will become poor. Because you consumers are not demanding, corporate are not producing, and government has to spend more. So government will also be incurring deficit, and that is why a net exports to the country will also decrease. So this is what happened in 1939. Okay, so in 1929 to 1939, in US economy, aggregate demand decreased. Since the aggregate demand decreased, because of severe decrease in the aggregate demand, consumption demand decreased. And the consumption demand decreased, that means the corporate demand of people, hiring people decreased, investment in the economy decreased, government liabilities increased, government expenses increased, and government incurred more deficit. Government expenses were more than government revenue. So government was also incurring more expenses, and exports of the country decreased. So overall demand in the country decreased, and that is why unemployment increased, output decreased, and income decreased. This happened in 1930 in US economy, which is known as Great Depression. Depression means very low level of aggregate demand, which results in very low level of consumption, which results in very less level of investment, high level of unemployment, low level of income. Now, this was the scenario in US in 1930s, and which spread all across the world, and the countries were passing through low level of output and income and employment. And at that time, this John Maynard Keynes, famous economist, who is considered as father of macroeconomics, so John Maynard Keynes, considered as father of macroeconomics. Why is he considered as father of macroeconomics? Because he brought revolution in the field of economics, macroeconomics. What he said, that when consumption is decreasing, investment demand is decreasing, corporate are not producing, unemployment in the country is increasing, and overall job opportunities. Okay, fine. So basically, Great Depression में क्या हुआ? See, किसी भी country का demand किस पर depend करता है? Households पर. Household like us. आपके और मेरी तरह के लोग जो कि डिमांड क्रिएट करते हैं. आप डिमांड क्रिएट करते हो, इसीलिए तो कॉर्पोरेट प्रोड्यूस करते हैं. तो कॉर्पोरेट प्रोड्यूस करेंगे मींस वो एम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ेगा, क्योंकि प्रोडक्शन बढ़ेगा तो एम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ेगा, एम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ेगा तो क्या होगा? इनकम बढ़ेगी, और इनकम बढ़ेगी देन इन दैट केस व्हाट विल हैपन कि कंजम्पशन, इनकम बढ़ेगी तो आप कंज्यूम ज्यादा करोगे, कंज्यूम ज्यादा करोगे दैट मीन्स आप ज्यादा डिमांड करोगे, डिमांड ज्यादा करोगे, इसलिए कॉर्पोरेट ज्यादा प्रोड्यूस करेंगे, और इस तरह से इकोनॉमी में ग्रोथ होगी. ओके, बट 1930s में क्या हुआ कि ओवरऑल कंजम्पशन डिमांड डिक्रीज, कंजम्पशन की डिमांड बहुत कम हो गई. अगर कंजम्पशन नहीं होगा, कंजम्पशन के लिए आपके पास इनकम नहीं है, सो इनकम नहीं होगी तो कंजम्पशन डिक्रीज हो गया, इसीलिए इन्वेस्टमेंट्स भी इकोनॉमी में कम हो गए. सो इन्वेस्टमेंट्स इन द इकोनॉमी डिक्रीज, और इन्वेस्टमेंट डिक्रीज होने से क्या हो गया? आउटपुट कम हो गया, आउटपुट कम होने से फर्दर इनकम कम हो गई, और इनकम कम होने से ओवरऑल कंजम्पशन भी कम हो जाएगा. सो दिस वेंट ऑन, ये चलता रहा, जिसकी वजह से ओवरऑल इकोनॉमी का डाउनफॉल हो गया. और इतना सीवियर डाउनफॉल हुआ कि लोगों को बेसिक एमिनिटीज के लिए भी प्रॉब्लम हुआ. दे कुड नॉट हैव बेसिक एमिनिटीज ऑफ लाइफ. सो दैट इज व्हाई एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम 1939-36, which continued for 10 years, 1929 to 1939, and 1930 में जब ग्रेट डिप्रेशन हुआ, जब इकोनॉमी ओवरऑल डाउनटर्न में आ गई, तब जॉन मेनार्ड किन्स, जो इकोनॉमिक्स के प्रोफेसर, उन्होंने कॉन्सेप्ट दिया that in this case, in such a scenario, the government has to take the charge. The government has to intervene. How the government has to intervene? Government has to start subsidizing, government has to start capital expenditure, and because of that, corporate will gain more trust, and they will also start investing in the economy, and that is how the economy will be back on track. So this Great Depression happened because the corporate were not investing, consumers were not buying, job opportunities were not there in the market, and overall economy was on the downturn. And that is why government had to take initiative, and which was proposed by whom? By John Maynard Keynes, who is known as father of macroeconomics. Okay, so general theory, and he introduced this to the book which is known as the General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, जो उन्होंने लिखी जॉन मेनार्ड किन्स ने 1936 में. एंड ये बुक ने रेवोल्यूशन लाया मार्केट में, बिकॉज इकोनॉमी जो डाउनटर्न पे थी वो गवर्नमेंट के कंट्रीब्यूशन से फिर से ट्रैक पे आ गई. Because of 1936, this concept was brought by John Maynard Keynes that government has to play a very important role when the economy is in the downturn, and that is why the economy was back on track, and countries started generating income. People started getting jobs. Income increased in the country, and since income increased in the country with increase in employment, demand was created. And once the demand was created, corporate started producing, and the economy was back on track. जो downfall हुआ था economy में, economy वापस track पे आ गई because of this concept which was introduced by John Maynard Keynes in his book The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, जो उन्होंने लिखी 1936 में. मॉडर्न इकोनॉमिक्स विच केम, आज आप देखो कोविड में क्या हुआ, गवर्नमेंट ने बहुत हेल्प की फॉर कॉर्पोरेट ऑल्सो, फॉर अदर पीपल ऑल्सो, इसीलिए हमारी इकोनॉमी जो डाउनटर्न पे थी वापस ट्रैक पे आ सकती. तो दैट इज व्हाट किन्स प्रपोज. जब तक कंजम्पशन डिमांड नहीं होगी इकोनॉमी में प्रोडक्शन नहीं होगा. सो इम्पोर्टेंट इज कंजम्पशन डिमांड. सो कंजम्पशन डिमांड प्लेज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. और कंजम्पशन कब होगा? जब कंज्यूमर्स के पास, हाउस होल्ड के पास इनकम होगी. इनकम कब होगी? जब उनके पास जॉब होगी. So this is how these three are related. What three components we are going to discuss today about? Which three components? Income, output, and employment. These three are interrelated. Yes, if income increases, you demand more. You demand more, corporate will be producing more. Output will increase. Once corporate will produce more, that means they'll create more jobs. More jobs means more income. More income means more consumption, and this goes on. This goes on. As long as this is going on, country will be progressing. If consumers are not demanding, that means they do not have income. If the income decreases, demand decreases. Demand in the economy decreases means अगर हाउस होल्ड डिमांड नहीं करेंगे, कॉर्पोरेट प्रोड्यूस नहीं करेंगे, कॉर्पोरेट प्रोड्यूस नहीं करेंगे मींस एम्प्लॉयमेंट नहीं बढ़ेगा, एम्प्लॉयमेंट नहीं बढ़ेगा मींस इनकम नहीं बढ़ेगी, इनकम नहीं बढ़ेगी मींस फर्दर प्रोडक्शन नहीं बढ़ेगा और इकोनॉमी का डाउनफॉल होगा. सो दैट इज व्हाट. So modern economics today is defined by, as per the concept given by John Maynard Keynes, who is considered as father of macroeconomics. इन्होंने बताया कि अगर इकोनॉमी में डाउनफॉल होता है तो गवर्नमेंट का बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल होता है ताकि कॉन्फिडेंस बढ़े इन्वेस्ट कॉर्पोरेट्स का. यस, अगर हम प्रोडक्शन करेंगे तो कंज्यूमर्स डिमांड करेंगे. जब उनका कॉन्फिडेंस बढ़ेगा उसकी वजह से वो प्रोडक्शन बढ़ाएंगे मींस इनकम बढ़ेगी, एम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ेगा और कंज्यूमर्स गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज बाय कर पाएंगे. तो दिस इज हाउ इट वर्क्स. It led to, okay, Vidhan is asking what led investors to lose the confidence in the market. Actually क्या हुआ इस समय Vidhan, and for all of you, Great Depression में क्या हुआ कि ओवरऑल मार्केट में डाउनफॉल हो गया. कैपिटल मार्केट, जो मार्केट जिसमें लोग इन्वेस्ट करते हैं उसमें डाउनफॉल हो गया. बैंक्स जो थे, बैंक्स में लिक्विडिटी नहीं थी, बैंक्स के पास इनफ पैसा नहीं था, तो बैंक्स का भी डाउनफॉल हो गया. इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज वर नॉट रेडी टू गिव इंश्योरेंस. सो ओवरऑल फाइनेंशियल हेल्थ कंट्री की एडवर्सली इम्पैक्ट हो गई. और इसकी वजह से क्या हुआ कि कॉर्पोरेट्स का इन्वेस्टमेंट्स हैम्पर हो गया, डिक्रीज हो गया, और इसकी वजह से इनकम डिक्रीज हो गई. एंड यू वोंट बिलीव एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम पीपल हैड टू स्टैंड इन क्यूज फॉर आवर्स एंड आवर्स टू गेट बेसिक फूड. एम्प्लॉयमेंट ऑफिस में बहुत सारे लोगों की लाइन इकट्ठी हो गई बिकॉज उनके पास जॉब्स नहीं थे. सो कैपिटल मार्केट क्रैश हो गया, बैंक्स के पास फंड्स नहीं थे, कॉर्पोरेट के पास इनफ इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं था, उनकी कॉस्ट ऑफ बोरोइंग्स बढ़ गई, उनके मार्जिन्स कम हो गए, उनके प्रॉफिट डिक्रीज हो गए, इसीलिए उन्होंने जॉब से निकाल दिया, जॉब से निकालने से इनकम कम हो गई और ओवरऑल मार्केट क्रैश हो गई. ओके, सो ग्रेट डिप्रेशन. सो ग्रेट डिप्रेशन में किन्स का रोल बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, जिन्होंने ये कॉन्सेप्ट इंट्रोड्यूस किया. सो व्हाट इज द रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन कंजम्पशन एंड इनकम? इन किन्स ने बताया कि अगर इनकम बढ़ेगी तभी तो कंजम्पशन बढ़ेगा. सो ही एस्टैब्लिश्ड रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन इनकम एंड कंजम्पशन. देन अगर आपकी इनकम में से आप 50% कंज्यूम करोगे और 50% सेव करोगे, तो ये जो 50% आप कंज्यूम करोगे, ये कोई और, अगर आप कुछ स्पेंड करोगे, इफ यू स्पेंड 50% ऑफ योर इनकम, दैट मीन्स यू आर स्पेंडिंग ऑन सम गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज, दैट मीन्स यू आर क्रिएटिंग डिमांड, so this money will go to somebody else. Okay, so suppose A purchases goods from B. Okay, A is purchasing goods from B, that means A is giving that money to B, and A is getting that product, so B gets income, B gets money, and then B will go for spending, so B spends buying goods from C, and this is how the money gets multiplied from one to the other, and that is about the impact of multiplier. So consumption अगर बढ़ेगा तो उसका multiple impact पड़ेगा, isn't it? So this is what was taken care by Keynes. तो demand क्या होगी, इससे amplify हो जाएगी, बढ़ जाएगी, and this will lead to what? Once the demand increases, this will lead to more output. The output in the country will increase. So this is what Keynes said about that consumption is very, very important, and consumption depends on what? Income of the consumers. Then liquidity preference. Keynes introduced another concept that was about liquidity. See, once you have money, आप मनी को डिफरेंट वेज में स्पेंड करते हो. यू स्पेंड मनी फॉर वन फॉर ट्रांजैक्टिव मोटिव. ट्रांजैक्टिव मोटिव मीन्स यू वांट टू बाय गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज. So you buy goods and services, that is you're transacting by paying money, and in return you get some product. So that is a transactive motive. Apart from that, you save certain money, certain quantity of money you save, isn't it? You spend, once you have income, then you save. You save it for rainy days. If something goes wrong, then I should have some money. So you save. Okay, that is precautionary motive. And the third motive is that you go for investments. So you invest. What Keynes said about liquidity preferences, this spending, money kept for spending. So how much money you want to keep for spending, that is liquidity preference. So people, if they have higher preference for keeping money liquid, that means they will be spending more. If they will be spending more, that means they will be creating more demand. If they are creating more demand means, if they create more demand और उसी proportionate में अगर supply नहीं बढ़ेगा तो क्या होगा? Prices increase हो जाएंगी. So he established relationship between the demand and supply and the price level in the country. If demand is more, if aggregate demand is more and production कम है, तो क्या होगा? Those who can buy, they'll buy at a higher price. So inflation in the country will increase, price level in the country will increase. अगर prices बढ़ेंगी तो क्या होगा उस केस में? If the prices increases, then the RBI will go for increasing the interest rates. RBI को interest rate बढ़ाना पड़ेगा. So this is how it impacts. So liquidity preference, किन्स ने बताया liquidity preference में कितना पैसा लोग अपनी इनकम का लिक्विड में रखना चाहते हैं ताकि वो स्पेंड कर सके. जितना ज्यादा स्पेंडिंग होगा उतना ज्यादा डिमांड क्रिएट होगा. अगर डिमांड सप्लाई से मैच नहीं होगा तो क्या होगा? प्राइसेस बढ़ेंगी. इफ प्राइसेस गोज अप, देन इन दैट केस इन्फ्लेशन कंट्री में बढ़ेगा. अगर इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ेगा तो रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया को इंटरवीन करना पड़ेगा. क्या करेगा रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया? इंटरेस्ट रेट्स बढ़ा देगा. ओके, सो इंटरेस्ट रेट का लिक्विडिटी प्रेफरेंस से क्या रिलेशनशिप है, ये किन्स ने बताया, जो हम आगे शेयर करेंगे. Precautionary, yes, Vedant. Precautionary motive and speculative motive. Then importance of expectations. Expectations का बहुत important role है. See, corporate, they produce based on what they produce कि consumers buy करेंगे. So they anticipate that the consumers are going to buy, and that is why they go for investments to produce more. Now, if corporate, they are anticipating कि demand बढ़ेगा, if corporate they anticipate that demand is going to increase, अगर corporate को लगता है कि investment in consumption demand बढ़ेगा, तो corporate क्या करेंगे? Investments बढ़ा देंगे, because उनको लगता है कि overall consumption demand बढ़ेगी. If they expect that the consumption demand will increase, consumers are going to buy, so they expect that the investments, so they'll go for more investments because उनको लगता है consumption demand बढ़ेगी तो हमको production move करना चाहिए और इससे क्या होगा उनका inventories बढ़ जाएगा. Inventories will increase because in anticipation of that the consumption demand is going to increase. We should produce more. अगर ये consumption demand corporate ने expect किया कि बढ़ेगा और suppose consumption demand नहीं बढ़ा तो क्या होगा? Investment surplus हो जाएगा. If investment is surplus, that means the corporate have produced more. Now, since they have produced more and the overall demand is less, what will happen in that case? Since the consumption demand is less and investment demand is more, the employment in the country will decrease. So the employment in the country will decrease. If employment decreases means overall income in the country will decrease. So basically, इस केस में consumption decide करता है investment को, but investments जो based है वो consumption की expectations पे होता है. Okay, so you will come across the term ex ante. Ex ante means what is the expectation? What is the expectation of consumers to go for spending? And according to that, corporate they go for planning how much investments we should do. So plan investments of the corporate. Investments is planned by the corporate based on what will be the demand created by consumers or the household sector. So expectations. Importance of expectations. Expectations of consumers by corporate, which affects the consumption and investment demand. इसके बारे में हम आगे share करेंगे. So these are some important things. Okay, so this is how it is going to work. Okay, thanks. So this is how. So ये concepts जो हैं Keynes ने introduce किए, जिसकी वजह से हम उनको कहते हैं कि he is the man who brought revolution in the field of macroeconomics. आप macroeconomics समझते हैं ना? Macroeconomics we talk about macros of the country, national income कितना है country का, employment कितना है country में, inflation कितना है country में, overall production कितना है country में. So all these concepts are related to macro, what we have been sharing from last 2 classes or 3 classes. Okay, so this is what Keynes said about. Now, as we have shared, we'll start with 2-sector model. 2-sector model में क्या है? Households हैं and firms हैं. आप देख रहे हो यहाँ पे? एक households हैं. Households are people like me and you, those who spend on goods and services. हम क्या करते हैं? हम goods and services पे spend करते हैं. We spend on households, we spend on goods and services. So you avail banking services, you avail like tourism, travel, insurance, health, other services you avail. Okay. Similarly, you buy goods. You buy goods of different, like you buy luxurious goods, you buy necessity goods, refrigerators, AC, cars. Then you buy basic goods, food, vegetables, other things. Okay. So we spend on goods and services. So we households spend on goods and services. अगर आप स्पेंड कर रहे हो गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज में तो फर्म्स प्रोड्यूस कर रही हैं, सो फर्म्स आर प्रोड्यूसिंग. तो फर्म्स प्रोड्यूस कर रही हैं, आप उसको परचेज कर रहे हैं. तो वन इज दैट फर्म्स आर प्रोड्यूसिंग. यू कैन सी दिस वन. सो फर्म्स प्रोड्यूस कर रही हैं गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज और आप ले रहे हो. यू आर बाइंग दोज गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज. ओके, और आप क्या कर रहे हो? उस गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज को कंज्यूम कर रहे हो. सो कंज्यूमर्स आर कंज्यूमिंग. You are consuming. So you are consuming. Firms are giving you goods and services and you are consuming. और आप consume कर रहे हो तो इसलिए आप उसके लिए पैसा दे रहे हो. So you are paying for that, isn't it? So you are paying. Here you are buying and here you are paying. Similarly, if firms are producing, ये अगर firm produce कर रही है, कैसे produce कर रही है? Because आप अपनी services दे रहे हो. So factor inputs. What are the factor inputs which are giving services here? So you have land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. So these are factor inputs. So land, अगर firm का अपना land है, so that means they are sacrificing the rentals which they could have got. We have shared in national income accounting. उसको क्या कहते हैं? Imputed rent. So अगर corporate है, अपना land use कर रहे हैं, तो that means they are sacrificing rent which they would have got. That is known as imputed rent. Otherwise, उन्होंने land अगर लिया है तो उनको उसके लिए rent देना पड़ेगा. Okay, labor is about you have to pay सैलरी टू देम, वेजेस टू देम, सो फैक्टर इनकम हो गया। कैपिटल के लिए आपने अगर कैपिटल लिया है तो आपको उसको इंटरेस्ट देना पड़ेगा। अगर आप अपना कैपिटल यूज कर रहे हैं तो देन यू आर फॉरगोइंग द इंटरेस्ट। तो वी हैव शेयर इम्प्यूटेड इंटरेस्ट ऑल्सो। इम्प्यूटेड इंटरेस्ट क्या होता है? जब आप अपना कैपिटल यूज कर रहे हैं तो इंटरेस्ट रेट जो आप सैक्रिफाइस कर रहे हैं, द अपॉर्चुनिटी कॉस्ट विच यू आर सैक्रिफाइसिंग, so that is capital. Okay, entrepreneur gets what? Entrepreneur gets profit for taking risk. So these are factor income. Okay, so factor income is given to factors of production. जो factors produce कर रहे हैं goods and services, उनको factor income मिलेगी. So this is about factor payments. So उनको क्या मिलता है? Factor payment. ये factor inputs को factor payments मिलता है. Factor payments देता कौन है? Firms देती हैं. So factor payment is paid by firms to the households. Okay, so firms, they produce goods and services. They are producing goods and services. It goes to households. Households, they buy these goods and services. They pay to the corporate. They pay to the corporate by outer circle. यहाँ पे वो दे रहे हैं पैसा और इन रिटर्न उनको गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज मिल रहे हैं. यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? इनर सर्कल आप देखो, डॉटेड वन में क्या हो रहा है कि आप हाउसहोल्ड्स आर गिविंग फैक्टर सर्विसेज, फैक्टर इनपुट्स. ओके, और आउटर सर्कल में क्या हो रहा है? फर्म्स जो है फैक्टर पेमेंट्स कर रही हैं. तो दोनों आउटर सर्कल्स, इफ यू सी, आउटर सर्कल इज मनी इन्वॉल्व. आप जब स्पेंड कर रहे हैं तो मनी स्पेंड कर रहे हैं. फर्म्स जब आपको पे कर रही है तो वो मनी टर्म्स में पे, मॉनेटरी टर्म्स में पे कर रही है. सो आउटर सर्कल डिपिक्ट्स अबाउट मनी फ्लो. Money flow is from households to the corporate and from corporate to the household. And why do we say it is a complete circle? It is a complete circle, reason being, जितना आप household spend कर रहे हो, उतना ही firms आपको pay कर रही है. So that is why spending is equal to income. Whatever you spend is equal to income, and that is why it is a circular flow. Otherwise, the circular flow नहीं होता ना. So this is what we assume here. It is a circular flow. Whatever income is generated by households, by working for the corporate, they spend on goods and services. And whatever the household sector is going to spend, that much amount of money the firms are going to pay to the household in terms of factor payments. So it's a complete circle. Okay, so it's a complete circle. That means factor payments are equal to household income. जितना मिला factors of production को, वो कितना है? That is equal to the household income. So firms दे रही हैं factor payments और income मिल रही है households को, that is equal. और जितनी income households को मिल रही है उतना वो spend कर रहे हैं. So they are spending that much. और जितना वो spend कर रहे हैं उतना firms को मिल रहा है. So that means it is the complete circular flow between two sectors, that is households and firms. So money flow and real flow. Outer circle क्या है? Outer circle is money flow and the inner circle is real flow. Because inner circle में क्या हो रहा है? Inner circle में goods and services produce हो रहे हैं और factor services render हो रही है. तो that is a real flow. Money flow क्या है? जिसमें monetary transactions हो रहे हैं, जो outer circle में है. So monetary transactions will be in the terms of factor payments. Factor payments given to factors of production, that is wages, rent, interest, and profits. And monetary flow from the households to the corporate will be in terms of payment made for the goods and services. So जो आप ले रहे हैं उसके लिए payment जो आप कर रहे हैं, that is, the outer circle is money flow and inner circle is real flow, and both are equal. Reason being, whatever is produced is purchased by, whatever is produced by corporate is purchased by household. Whatever payment has been made by firms to the household, that has been spent on goods and services, and that much amount of money is paid to the household. So it's a full circle. That is why it is known as circular flow and two-sector model. Real economy में two sector तो होगा नहीं, because बाकी players भी involved है. But ये concept से हम शुरू कर दें ताकि आपको समझ में आ जाए कि difference क्या है real flow और money flow में, factor payments में और consumption expenditure में. Okay, so this is what is real flow. तो real sector, two sector economy में क्या होगा? Two sector है. Two sector क्या है आपके? So two sectors are households and corporate. Household क्या करते हैं? Consumption demand, और corporate करते हैं investment demand. Total demand कितनी होगी? Aggregate demand is equal to consumption demand created by household and the corporate investment demand created by corporate. So this is total demand. And what is ex ante consumption, ex ante investments? Corporate are producing based on what consumers will be, how much consumers will be spending or how much consumer demand will be. So this is just expected. अभी आपको पता नहीं है कि रियल कितना होगा, बट ये एक्सपेक्टेड डिमांड है, एक्सपेक्टेड डिमांड और एक्सपेक्टेड प्लान इन्वेस्टमेंट्स. रियल में डिफरेंस हो सकता है, बट बेस्ड ऑन दी कंजम्पशन डिमांड, एक्सपेक्टेड कंजम्पशन डिमांड, कॉर्पोरेट अपना प्रोडक्शन करते हैं, इन्वेस्टमेंट्स करते हैं. दे प्लान अकॉर्डिंग टू एक्सपेक्टेड डिमांड बाय दी कंज्यूमर. सो दैट इज व्हाई एक्स एंटे कंजम्पशन एंड एक्स एंटे इन्वेस्टमेंट्स. सो शॉर्ट रन में क्या होगा, कंजम्पशन एक्सपेंडिचर will be factor which will be deciding about investments. अब corporate ने based on consumption demand उन्होंने एक investments कर दिया. Investments किस पे depend करता है, external factors पे. External factors क्या हो सकते हैं, external factors की economy कैसा perform कर रही है, ओवरऑल कंट्री का हेल्थ कैसा है, उस पर इन्वेस्टमेंट डिपेंड करता है. इन्वेस्टमेंट्स आप कब बढ़ा देते हो, जब आपको लगता है कि कंट्री अच्छा परफॉर्म कर रही है, ओवरऑल डिमांड बढ़ेगी और हमको हायर रिटर्न्स मिलेंगे. सो यू स्टार्ट इन्वेस्टिंग मोर. इंटरेस्ट रेट्स कम है तो हमारी कॉस्ट ऑफ बोरिंग्स भी कम है, वी कैन गो फॉर इन्वेस्टमेंट. सो व्हेन द कॉर्पोरेट दे फील लाइक दैट द इकोनॉमी इज गोइंग टू डू वेल and the interest rates are also low, so that means they can borrow at a low cost. Their cost of borrowings will decrease and their profits will increase in the long term because the overall economy is doing well, they invest. But core factor investments का क्या है, consumption. If the consumption demand is expected to be higher, corporate will be investing more. So investment depend किस पे करता है, aggregate demand short term में क्या important है, aggregate demand में consumption demand ज्यादा important है. बिकॉज अगर कंजम्पशन डिमांड नहीं होगी तो इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं होगा, इन्वेस्टमेंट्स नहीं होगा तो इकोनॉमी ग्रो नहीं करेगी. तो शॉर्ट टर्म में इंपॉर्टेंट क्या है, कंजम्पशन डिमांड. और कंजम्पशन डिमांड कौन क्रिएट करता है, हाउस होल्ड्स. ओके, कंजम्पशन डिमांड और हाउस होल्ड्स की कंजम्पशन, आई एम सॉरी माय हैंडराइटिंग. हाउस होल्ड डिमांड इज क्रिएटेड बाय व्हाट फैक्टर, व्हिच फैक्टर डिपेंड्स हाउस होल्ड का कंजम्पशन डिमांड के लिए, डिस्पोजेबल इनकम. इनकी इनकम कितनी है और उस इनकम में से कितना वो कंजम्पशन के लिए स्पेंड करते हैं. सो अगर डिस्पोजेबल इनकम बढ़ेगी और कंजम्पशन बढ़ेगा तो डेफिनेटली इन्वेस्टमेंट्स बढ़ेगा. तो शॉर्ट टर्म में इंपॉर्टेंट क्या है, शॉर्ट टर्म में इंपॉर्टेंट है कंजम्पशन डिमांड. बिकॉज इन्वेस्टमेंट जो है, इन्वेस्टमेंट डिपेंड्स ऑन अदर फैक्टर्स, एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स. ओके, सो शॉर्ट टर्म व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट इज कंजम्पशन. इफ देयर इज कंजम्पशन डिमांड then only the overall demand in the economy will increase, otherwise demand in the economy will not increase. So consumption short term में important है. एक्सोजीनस फैक्टर्स विदान मींस एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स, जो कि जैसे कि इकोनॉमी कैसा परफॉर्म कर रही है, इंटरेस्ट रेट्स क्या है, ओवरऑल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर कैसा है कंट्री का, गवर्नमेंट की पॉलिसी सपोर्ट कर रही है इन्वेस्टमेंट्स को या नहीं. आप देखो, पीपल आर इन्वेस्टिंग मोर इन स्टार्टअप्स टुडे. क्यों इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं स्टार्टअप्स में, बिकॉज उनको पता है कि कंट्री, लोगों के पास मोबाइल है, वो टेक्नोलॉजी ड्रिवन हो गए हैं, एप्स, नंबर ऑफ एप्स आर इंक्रीजिंग. व्हाई सो, एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स की वजह से, इजंट इट. अगर ये नहीं होता सपोर्टिंग सिस्टम तो स्टार्टअप्स इतने बढ़ते नहीं, डिजिटल एप्स इतने बढ़ते नहीं इंडिया में. सो एक्सोजीनस फैक्टर्स आर द एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर्स व्हिच सपोर्ट्स इन्वेस्टमेंट्स इन अ स्पेसिफिक सेगमेंट और कंट्रीज इन्वेस्टमेंट्स. जो कंट्री अच्छा कर रही है उसमें इन्वेस्टमेंट्स ऑटोमेटिकली बढ़ते जाएंगे, बिकॉज लोगों को पता है कि अगर हम इन्वेस्ट करेंगे तो हमारे रिटर्न्स बढ़ेंगे. जो कंट्री में डाउनफॉल है उस कंट्री में कोई इन्वेस्ट क्यों करेगा, बिकॉज उनको पता है कि उनके रिटर्न्स नहीं मिलेंगे. सो एक्सोजीनियस फैक्टर्स प्लेज इंपॉर्टेंट रोल इन इन्वेस्टमेंट. सो बेसिकली शॉर्ट टर्म में कंट्री का ग्रोथ या डिमांड किस पे डिपेंड करती है, कंजम्पशन पे. अगर हाउस होल्ड डिमांड करेंगे तभी तो कॉर्पोरेट प्रोड्यूस करेंगे. ओके, सो दिस इज कंजम्पशन फंक्शन गिवन बाय किन्स. This consumption function you see is a function of income. Higher the income, higher the level of consumption. Okay, if income will decrease, consumption will decrease. अगर households के पास income नहीं है तो वो कैसे consume करेंगे. So that is, अगर वो consume भी करेंगे तो उस केस में उनको लोन लेना पड़ेगा. लोन लेना पड़ेगा means if you do not have enough income and you consume, that means you borrow more. You borrow more means you pay interest also and the principal amount also. So it will lead to more debt savings because आपकी obligations बढ़ेंगी, आपके debt obligations बढ़ेंगे. तो इसीलिए consumption and income का direct relationship है. Higher the income, higher is the consumption. ओके, बट इज कंजम्पशन ओनली डिपेंडेंट ऑन इनकम, या इनकम के अलावा भी कुछ फैक्टर्स हैं जिसपे की कंजम्पशन डिपेंड करता है? सो कंजम्पशन इनकम पे डेफिनेटली डिपेंड करता है, बट अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट दिस कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ ऑटोनोमस कंजम्पशन, आप इस ग्राफ में देख रहे हो, कंजम्पशन दिस इज जीरो, हियर इनकम इज जीरो, income is zero, but still this much is consumption. So consumption economy में इतना है despite zero income के. Why is it so? It simply means कि अगर आपके पास income नहीं है, that means you'll stop consuming. आप एक basic need आपकी है, वो तो आप fulfill करोगे. So that means the demand will always be there even at zero level of income. Okay, so this demand is known as autonomous consumption. Autonomous consumption means ये कंजम्पशन इनकम पे डिपेंड नहीं करता है. अगर इनकम जीरो है तब भी ये कंजम्पशन होगा. दैट इज व्हाई यू सी दिस कंजम्पशन कर्व इज नॉट स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम जीरो, इट इज स्टार्टिंग अबव जीरो. यहां से शुरू हो रही है ना, दिस इज डेफिनेटली मोर देन जीरो. सो दिस कंजम्पशन इज ऑटोनॉमस कंजम्पशन, और इसको हम रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं ए से. सो किन्स ने कहा कि अगर इनकम जीरो है तब भी आप कुछ लेवल ऑफ कंजम्पशन आप करोगे. ये कंजम्पशन इनकम पर डिपेंड नहीं करेगा. सो दिस इज ऑटोनॉमस. अगर इनकम जीरो होती तो ये बी जीरो होता, बट ए तो होता. सो दिस ए इज ऑटोनॉमस कंजम्पशन विच विल स्टार्ट ओवर एंड अबव जीरो लेवल ऑफ इनकम. ओके, सो दिस इज ऑटोनॉमस कंजम्पशन जो इनकम पर डिपेंड नहीं करता है. नाउ व्हाट इज दिस बी? बी इज the level of consumption which depends on income, and this B depicts about if income increases by 1%, at what percentage consumption will increase. Basically, this B is known as marginal propensity to consume, MPS. What is marginal propensity to? B is marginal. ये स्लोप है. अगर आप देखो ये B स्लोप. स्लोप क्या है? ये स्लोप है. दैट मीन्स व्हाट? अगर इनकम यहाँ पे चेंज हो रही है, उसकी वजह से कंजम्पशन कितना चेंज हो रहा है. दिस इज बी. बी डिपिक्ट्स व्हाट? change in consumption to change in income. Okay, so basically if income increases by 1%, how much is increase in consumption? अगर ₹1 से इनकम बढ़ती है कंट्री में, if income increases by ₹1, just an example, if income increases by ₹1, consumption कितना बढ़ रहा है? 50 पैसा से बढ़ रहा है, या 80 पैसा से बढ़ रहा है, या 60 पैसा से बढ़ रहा है? That is B. B is marginal propensity to consume, which depicts the slope of the consumption function, and this depicts about the change in consumption with additional increase in income. अगर इनकम ₹1 से बढ़ रही है तो कंजम्पशन कितना बढ़ रहा है? 50 पैसे से बढ़ रहा है, 60 पैसे से बढ़ रहा है, 70 पैसे से बढ़ रहा है, 80 पैसे से बढ़ रहा है, 90 पैसे से. So this is marginal propensity to consume. Marginal propensity to consume means हाउसहोल्ड की स्पेंड करने की कैपेसिटी. marginal propensity to consume, I'm sorry, not S, marginal propensity to consume. That means how much consumers are ready to, what if income increases by ₹1, what percentage of this increase in income consumer are ready to spend. Okay, if they spend more and more, that means P will be higher and higher. But किन्स ने कहा कि अगर इनकम बढ़ती है ₹1 से, तो कंज्यूमर पूरा ₹1 स्पेंड नहीं करेगा. कंज्यूमर विल स्पेंड लेस देन ₹1. दैट मीन्स with increase in income, consumption will increase, but this increase in consumption will not be equal to increase in income. It will definitely be less than increase in income. So अगर आपकी इनकम ₹1 से बढ़ती है कंट्री में, तो that means you will be spending maybe 0.99 paisa, but you will not spend 100 paisa. Why so? Because that is what Keynes said about. So B की value जो होगी will be greater than 0, but definitely less than 1. Why less than 1? Because what is B? B is marginal propensity to consume. This marginal propensity to consume is change in consumption to change in income. If income increases by 1, consumption will increase by less than 1, maybe 0.8, 0.9, and so on and so on. Okay, so that is what Keynes said about. Okay, so this equation is depicted through this graph. Absolutely. Ex ante is anticipated. Ex ante is anticipated. Anticipated कि consumer जो है 100 units of good buy करेंगे और उसको anticipate करके producer ने produce कर दिए 100 units of good. अब since the producer has anticipated that the demand will be 100 units, but उसका calculation wrong हो गया because consumer ने 100 units नहीं purchase किए overall economy में. Suppose 80 units ही purchase किए, तो corporate की production कितनी है 100 units और कंज्यूमर की डिमांड कितनी है ओवरऑल डिमांड इन द इकोनॉमी 80 यूनिट्स है तो सरप्लस प्रोडक्शन कितना हो गया 20 यूनिट्स से so that is why the investments in the economy are planned based on what consumers are going to demand ex ante invest corporate anticipate the demand of the consumers and according household sector and they produce goods and services. Okay, so this is very important to understand consumption function. So two sector model में consumption is because two sector model में दो ही players हैं consumers और corporate और aggregate demand is the sum of consumption and investments और क्योंकि investments जो है external factors पे determine करते हैं इसीलिए short term में demand depend किस पे करती है consumption. So Keynes gave maximum importance to consumption demand in the short term. Okay, and this consumption demand is dependent on income. So he established the relationship between consumption and income by giving consumption function. The consumption function है income का और consumption केवल income पे depend नहीं करता है इसके अलावा भी एक फैक्टर है जो कि कंजम्पशन को ड्राइव करता है दैट इज ऑटोनॉमस कंजम्पशन. दैट मींस अगर एक आप सर्टेन लाइफस्टाइल लीड करते हैं तो अगर आपकी इनकम जीरो हो गई तो आप वो लाइफस्टाइल स्टॉप नहीं कर देते आप फिर भी वो कंज्यूम करते हो. आप क्या करते हो लोन्स ले लेते हो आप लोन लेके वो बेसिक नीड्स पूरी करते हो. सो दिस इज ऑटोनॉमस कंजम्पशन जो यहाँ पे दिख रहा है. सो कंजम्पशन में दो कंपोनेंट्स होंगे ऑटोनॉमस कंजम्पशन एंड marginal propensity to consume. This B is marginal propensity to consume. Marginal propensity to consume क्या होता है ये बेसिकली स्लोप है इस कर्व का और ये कर्व क्या दिखा रही है आपको जैसे जैसे इनकम बढ़ती जा रही है कंजम्पशन बढ़ता जा रहा है. तो एज इनकम इज इंक्रीजिंग कंजम्पशन दैट इज व्हाई इट इज अपवर्ड स्लोपिंग. ओके, नंबर 2 this slope depicts what rate of change in consumption with rate of change in income. So this depicts about change in income. ये इनकम चेंज हो गई. सो अगर आप यहाँ पे ये OY लेवल ऑफ इनकम है तो यहाँ पे इनकम कितनी हो गई OY डैश लेवल ऑफ इनकम हो गई. सो दिस इज चेंज इन इनकम. ओके, ये चेंज इन इनकम हुआ Y डैश चेंज इन इनकम और ये क्या है कंजम्पशन. ये वाली दिस Y एक्सिस इज कंजम्पशन. सो इनिशियल कंजम्पशन कितना था दिस मच. ओके, नाउ दिस इज द increase in consumption C dash. So ये दिखा रहा है आपको change in consumption. This is showing change in consumption. This is showing change in income. और ये B की वैल्यू क्या है B की वैल्यू है change in consumption to change in income. And what is this? This is known as marginal propensity to consume. और इसकी वैल्यू क्या होगी always it will be less than 1 but definitely greater than 0. बिकॉज जितनी भी आपकी इनकम बढ़ेगी उसका कुछ पैसा आप डेफिनेटली सेव करोगे आप पूरा का पूरा स्पेंड नहीं करोगे. So that is known as margin. So this is what is given by Keynes. Okay, now here we are establishing relationship between consumption and APC and marginal propensity to consume. What is the relationship between average and marginal propensity to consume. So when we talk about average and marginal propensity to consume, in this case, you can see average and marginal में relationship, I hope आपको समझ में आता है. What is the relationship between average and marginal? हमने पहले भी डिस्कस किया है प्रोडक्शन में भी. So concept is same, average and marginal का. So what is the relationship here? This is income of the country. अब आपको पता है कि अगर इनकम है कंट्री में तो इधर सपोज 100 रुपीज इनकम है, अगर 50 रुपीज आपने कंज्यूम किया तो 50 रुपीज आप सेव करोगे. ओके, और वी कैन से दैट if we have to find out savings will be y minus c. Yes, because अगर 100 रुपीज इनकम है, कंज्यूम आपने 50 किया तो सेविंग आपने 100 की, so 50 की. So this is how you can find out. So this is the relationship between income, consumption and savings. अगर आपको दो वेरिएबल्स दिए हैं तो आप तीसरा निकाल सकते हैं. चाहे आपको सेविंग्स एंड कंजम्पशन दे दिया एंड दे आस्क यू टू फाइंड आउट इनकम, सो यू नो दैट कंजम्पशन प्लस सेविंग्स इज इक्वल टू इनकम. ओके, इफ दे गिव यू इनकम एंड सेविंग्स, अगर आपको इनकम एंड सेविंग्स दी है तो आप कंजम्पशन निकालेंगे. इनकम माइनस सेविंग्स विल बी इक्वल टू कंजम्पशन. सो दिस इज व्हाट इज अबाउट 3 parameters. Okay, so first case में income is 0 but still consumption is 50. So what is this? This is autonomous consumption. Autonomous consumption, consumption at zero level of income. अब since consumption 50 crores है economy में, income 0 है, so that means this consumption is met through borrowings. So that is this savings. तो इसीलिए इसको हमने -50 दिखा दिया. Because income 0 है और consumption आपका 50 crores है. Since you do not have income, so definitely you have borrowed. The country has borrowed. That means 50 crore is this savings in the economy. Okay. Now suppose if income is 100 crores. If income is 100 crore, consumption है 125. That means consumption ज़्यादा है as compared to income. उस केस में भी 25 crore का this savings होगा. Because आपने consume ज़्यादा किया, आपकी income कम है. So income is less and consumption is more. So again it is this savings. This saving has reduced from 50 to 25. Reason being, income has increased from 0 to 100 crores. Okay. What will be average propensity to consume? Average propensity to consume will be 125 by 100. Consumption is 125 and income is 100. So propensity means desire to consume. Okay. Average propensity to consume is desire to consume based on the income. Okay. What is marginal propensity to consume? Marginal propensity to consume is the rate of change in consumption to change in income. Now consumption कितना change हो गया? Consumption has changed by how much? 75. 125 minus 50 is 75. And this has changed by 100. So 75 by 100. So this is 75 by 100. That is equal to 0.75. What it means? अगर income 100 crore से बढ़ेगी तो consumption 75 crore बढ़ेगा. Okay, so that means this is marginal propensity to consume 0.75. 0.75 means what? 75% of the income is spent on consumption. If you look here, income has increased from 100 to 200 crores. And since income has increased from 100 to 200 crore, consumption has increased from 125 to 200 crore. How much is increase in consumption? By 75. So now consumption is equal to income. That means savings will be 0. So where are you on this curve? If you look at this curve here, in this curve, consumption is equal to savings. So we will be sharing that. So here savings is 0. What will be APC, average propensity to consume? Consumption by income. Consumption is 200 crores. Income is 100 crore. So that means APC is 1. What about marginal propensity to consume? Marginal propensity to consume is rate of change. Rate of change is 200 minus 125 is 75. 200 minus 100 is 100. 75 by 100 is 0.75. That means 75% of income is spent on consumption, and this is same all throughout. That means the marginal propensity to consume is same all throughout. You can see here is same. Okay. So this is how APC and MPC. अगर आपको income and consumption दिया है and then they ask you to calculate APC and MPC, you can find out. आप कैलकुलेट कर सकते हैं APC and MPC अगर आपको इनकम एंड कंजम्पशन की सीरीज दी है तो. ओके, सो Basically, what you can learn from this is that as income increases, consumption will increase. One you can learn is that जैसे जैसे इनकम बढ़ती है कंजम्पशन बढ़ता है, कंजम्पशन इंक्रीजेस एंड दिस सेविंग्स रिड्यूसेस एंड सेविंग्स इंक्रीजेस. जैसे जैसे इनकम बढ़ती है कंजम्पशन बढ़ता है, सेविंग्स भी बढ़ती है. रीजन बीइंग you will not spend entire income of yours. जैसे जैसे इनकम बढ़ेगी आप कंजम्पशन तो बढ़ाओगे, साथ साथ सेविंग्स भी आपकी बढ़ती जाएगी बिकॉज यू विल नॉट स्पेंड एंटायर इनकम ऑन कंजम्पशन. ओके, सो दैट मीन्स with increase in income consumption increases, but this increase in consumption will be less than increase in income. That is what Keynes said about. Number two, he said that if income is zero, then also consumption will be there. And this consumption is A, that is autonomous consumption, which you can see here is 50 and 25, which is achieved by this savings. आप जो आपकी पहले की सेविंग्स है उससे विड्रॉ करके आप कंजम्पशन करेंगे या फिर आप बोरो करेंगे. Either you will borrow or you will withdraw your savings. That is why it is this savings in the economy. Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is clear, I hope so. So क्या रिलेशनशिप है इनकम कंजम्पशन सेविंग का, हमने ऑलरेडी डिस्कस कर लिया है. डिस्पोजेबल इनकम, डिस्पोजेबल इनकम यू रिमेम्बर नेशनल इनकम अकाउंटिंग में हमने शेयर किया था. डिस्पोजेबल इनकम क्या होती है? इसमें सारे ट्रांसफर पेमेंट्स इंक्लूडेड होते हैं और इट इज आफ्टर डिडक्टिंग ऑल अदर नॉन टैक्स लाइबिलिटीज. जितनी भी आपकी नॉन टैक्स लाइबिलिटीज हैं, टैक्स लाइबिलिटीज हैं, उसको माइनस करने के बाद जो इनकम आपके पास है टू डिस्पोज ऑफ, ये डिस्पोजेबल इनकम आप, इसमें ट्रांसफर पेमेंट्स इंक्लूडेड है. क्यों? क्योंकि आपकी डिस्पोजेबल इनकम बढ़ाती है. सो वी हैड ऑलरेडी डिस्कस दिस इन when we were talking about national income accounting disposable income. So this disposable income can be spent on consumption or can be saved. So this is what you can see here. So we have already shared this. I hope this is clear. जैसे जैसे इनकम बढ़ेगी कंजम्पशन बढ़ेगा, सेविंग्स भी रिस्पेक्टिवली बढ़ेंगी. जब इनकम जीरो होगी तब डिस सेविंग्स होगी इकोनॉमी में, और जब इनकम कम होगी एज कम्पेयर टू consumption, then also there will be dis savings in the economy. Okay. Absolutely, absolutely agree. ट्रांसफर पेमेंट्स भी इंक्लूड करोगे आप और उसके बाद आपको डिस्पोजेबल इनकम मिलेगी बिकॉज ट्रांसफर पेमेंट्स, आई होप यू अंडरस्टैंड ट्रांसफर इनकम क्या होती है और फैक्टर इनकम क्या होती है. सो ट्रांसफर इनकम विल बी इंक्लूडेड इन डिस्पोजेबल इनकम बिकॉज आपकी डिस्पोजेबल इनकम, आपके पास मनी इन हैंड बढ़ जाएगा ना. सो दैट इज व्हाई इट इज इंक्लूडेड इन डिस्पोजेबल इनकम. So national income accounting के concepts you should know very well. Now this is two sector model. अभी two sector model में हमने क्या बात किया? Two sectors are corporate and consumers. Now corporate can go for corporate, they go for production, and consumers क्या करते हैं? या तो अपनी disposable income को spend करते हैं या consume करते हैं. अब आप इसमें अभी last graph में जो हमने share किया, we had shared only consumption function. अब आप इसमें देखो कि we are sharing both. We are sharing consumption function. This is consumption function, and this consumption function abhi humne share kiya is equal to what? This consumption function is equal to a plus b y d, isn't it? Abhi so a kya hai isme? This is a, this autonomous. इसीलिए consumption कहाँ से शुरू हो रहा है? जीरो के अबाव से. ये वाली आपकी consumption function curve है. This one is your, this curve is the consumption function, and it's starting above zero, number one, because of the autonomous consumption, which is A here. Secondly, this slope is B, which is marginal propensity to consume, जो हमने शेयर किया. अभी तक हमने consumption function की बात की. अब आप इसमें देखो aggregate supply is also given. So this is aggregate supply. This one is aggregate supply, yes. So this is aggregate supply. Aggregate supply is the total output. Output produced in the country. Okay. आउटपुट कौन प्रोड्यूस कर रहा है? कॉर्पोरेट. बिकॉज अभी हम केवल टू सेक्टर मॉडल की बात कर रहे हैं. हु इज प्रोड्यूसिंग? output corporate only. And these corporate, they produce based on what consumers they demand. Okay, so this you can see here. So if you see left side of this Y1, what do you see on the left side of the Y1? You can see here that consumption is more. Y1 के लेफ्ट में अगर आप देखें तो consumption is more and income is less. Consumption is more, income is less. And because of that, what's happening in the lower panel, if you see in the lower panel, so lower panel में आप देख रहे हो savings and investments in the disposable income. So when you go for spending more than your income, country is spending more than its income, what will happen? You will be incurring this savings. So this is this savings. And this is the curve of savings. So what will happen when you consume more? Here the consumption is more than income. That is why there's this savings. So this savings is depicted in the lower panel. नीचे वाला ग्राफ जो है, that is depicting a relationship between savings and disposable income. ऊपर वाला जो पैनल है, that is depicting relationship between consumption and disposable income. Okay. और ऊपर वाले पैनल में आप एक इनकम कर्व भी देख रहे हो. इनकम कर्व इज which is y. Absolutely. So y1, जब तक y1 तक आप नहीं पहुंच रहे, when the economy is has yet not reached to y1, what is happening? This is a scenario. Consumption is more than income. So आप क्या कर रहे हैं? Country, what is country doing? You are withdrawing from your past savings because your disposable income is less. So you are withdrawing from past. That is why this is this savings. Okay, so this is this savings because you are withdrawing from the past savings up to y dash, up to this point. Now what happens at y, at this y dash, at this point, income is equal to consumption. Income is equal to, or output is equal to consumption. So here at this point, y is equal to, or rather, consumption is equal to investments. Yes, so total at this point, income, whatever is the output has been consumed. So that means this is the point of equilibrium. Now, if you go to right side of this y dash, if you see on the right side of this y dash, if we go from here, y1 to y2, what do you see when you go from y1 to y2? Now this savings has converted into savings. Delta S, this is savings. Why savings? Because now this income is more than consumption. So now once income is greater than consumption, what will happen? We have shared consumption will increase, but this increase in consumption will be less than increase in income, and hence savings in the economy will increase. राइट साइड में आप क्या देख रहे हैं? y1 के आप देख रहे हैं कि y2 as we move from y1 to y2, आप क्या देख रहे हो कि इनकम कंट्री की बढ़ गई. इनकम बढ़ने के साथ साथ कंजम्पशन बढ़ रहा है, बट कंजम्पशन जो इंक्रीज हो रहा है वो कम इंक्रीज हो रहा है एज कम्पेयर टू इनकम. और इसीलिए सिंस इनकम ज्यादा बढ़ रही है, कंजम्पशन कम बढ़ रहा है, तो इकोनॉमी में क्या होगा? सेविंग्स बढ़ेंगी. सो सेविंग्स आर इंक्रीजिंग. सो अगर आप लोअर पैनल में देखें तो सेविंग्स आर इंक्रीजिंग. सो सेविंग्स इज इंक्रीजिंग with increase in income. At the same time, consumption is also increasing, but increase in consumption is less than income. So what is the relationship here? Three components, three variables are interrelated: income, consumption, and savings. If income is increasing, consumption is increasing. At the same time, savings is increasing. But savings will only increase when income is greater than consumption. Okay, so here savings will increase because यहाँ पे consumption. अब इस scenario में क्या हुआ? Why income has increased? Why income has increased beyond equilibrium point? Now corporate are anticipating that the consumers will be buying more, so they have started producing more. जब वो produce करेंगे ज़्यादा, that means employment will increase. Employment increases means income will increase. Income increases means consumption will increase. So इसीलिए consumption बढ़ रहा है income increase होने के साथ, but consumption same proportion में बढ़ नहीं रहा है, because what Keynes said about, Keynes said that the marginal propensity to consume will be less than 1. It will be greater than 0 but less than 1. So that is why with increase in income consumption बढ़ रहा है, but same proportion में नहीं बढ़ रहा है, उससे कम बढ़ रहा है. That is why there is savings in the economy to the right side of y1. ओके, सो डिस सेविंग्स कब होगा, सेविंग्स कब होगा टू सेक्टर मॉडल में, इसके क्या रीजंस हैं. आपको एक स्टेटमेंट दे देंगे, उसके प्रोबेबल आंसर्स दे देंगे एग्जाम में, बिकॉज यू हैव ऑब्जेक्टिव पेपर, सो यू शुड बी एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड. अगर कॉन्सेप्ट आपको क्लैरिटी है तो आप फिर उसमें स्टैब्लिश कर पाएंगे रिलेशनशिप, क्या रिलेशनशिप है. ओके, सो दिस इज टू सेक्टर मॉडल. नाउ अभी तक हमने बात की मार्जिनल प्रोपेंसिटी टू कंज्यूम. मार्जिनल प्रोपेंसिटी टू कंज्यूम क्या है, चेंज इन कंजम्पशन टू चेंज इन इनकम. एंड एमपीसी और सी, और दूसरा आपको पता है वाईडी, वाईडी इज इक्वल टू सी प्लस एस. या तो आप कंज्यूम करोगे अपनी इनकम को या सेव करोगे. ओके, सो वी कैन से दैट if you are not consuming, you are spending. If you are spending, then you are, if you are consuming, then you are not saving. If you are saving, then you are not consuming. Okay, so then we can say that marginal propensity to consume, suppose if marginal propensity to consume is 0.80, what it means, it means अगर आपकी इनकम 1 रुपए से बढ़ी, so 80 पैसा आपने कंज्यूम किया और 20 पैसा आपने, सॉरी 20 पैसा आपने सेव किया. ओके, दैट मीन्स 1 minus 80 paisa is equal to savings. That means income minus consumption is savings. That means we can say if MPC is 0.80, then because MPS will be 0.20, because दोनों का sum MPC and MPS should be equal to 1. क्योंकि अगर आप कंज्यूम नहीं कर रहे तो आप सेव कर रहे. सो इफ एमपीसी इज 0.80 and the sum is equal to 1, that means MPS will be 0.20. Okay, or we can also write, आपको पता है MPC is equal to B. So we can also say that MPS will be equal to 1 minus B. What it means, कि अगर B की वैल्यू 0.80 है तो MPS की वैल्यू कितनी होगी, 0.020. दैट मीन्स 1 minus 0.80. ओके, सो MPC plus MPS is equal to 1. So this is the relationship between MPC, marginal propensity to consume, and marginal propensity to save. What is aggregate supply? Aggregate supply is consumption plus savings. Yes, aggregate supply is consumption plus savings. So either you consume or you, that is the condition of equilibrium. Because C plus S क्या है? Aggregate demand, or this is aggregate supply. So this is the condition of equilibrium. At equilibrium, aggregate demand will be equal to aggregate supply. Okay, अब आपको ये इक्वेशन दे दी और आपसे पूछा एपीएस का वैल्यू क्या होगा, तो एपीएस का वैल्यू आप कैसे निकालोगे, अगर आपको कंजम्पशन दिया है, इनकम दिया है. ओके, सो इफ दे हैव गिवन यू कंजम्पशन एंड इनकम एंड दे आर आस्किंग फॉर एवरेज प्रोपेंसिटी टू सेव. Average propensity to save is saving by income in the country. Now you know that income is equal to consumption plus savings. आपको दिया income and consumption. Income is given how much? 1000. Consumption is given 200. So what will be the value of savings? So savings will be 800. Okay, so savings is equal to 800. If savings is 800, income is 1000. So APS will be how much? 800 by 1000. .80. So APS value will be 0.80. Okay, so this is how you can calculate. Absolutely. So this is how you can calculate. Okay. So अगर आप कॉन्सेप्ट समझ में आ गया कि एवरेज प्रोपेंसिटी टू सेव क्या होता है, मार्जिनल प्रोपेंसिटी टू सेव क्या होता है, मार्जिनल प्रोपेंसिटी टू सेव और मार्जिनल प्रोपेंसिटी टू कंज्यूम का क्या रिलेशनशिप है, what is the relationship between average propensity to consume and average propensity to save, what is the relationship between income, consumption and savings, what is the relationship between income and consumption, why do we have autonomous consumption, what is the concept of marginal propensity to save and consume. So once you know the concept, आप कोई भी चाहे वो statement based problem हो या numerical problem हो, you will be able to do it. So concept again and again, I'm saying right from the very beginning of the session when we started discussing about this paper, that concept clarity is very important. अगर आपको concept समझ में आ गए, आप कोई भी question को easily attempt कर सकते हैं. So this is in two sector model, equilibrium. So equilibrium condition, what is the condition of equilibrium when we talk about condition of equilibrium in the economy? So equilibrium कहाँ होगा? जहाँ पे एग्रीगेट डिमांड क्या होती है? C plus I और एग्रीगेट सप्लाई. Okay, so these two are equal. These two are equal. Consumption and investments and consumption and savings are equal. Aggregate demand, equilibrium condition. अब आप इस ग्राफ में देखेंगे तो you will see two panels. फर्स्ट पैनल में हम बात कर रहे हैं एग्रीगेट डिमांड और इनकम की. सेकेंड ग्राफ में हम बात कर रहे हैं सेविंग्स और इन्वेस्टमेंट्स और इनकम की. सो वी आर एस्टैब्लिशिंग रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन, if I say this, these two, this is equilibrium, aggregate demand equal to aggregate supply, that means we are saying that C plus I is equal to C plus S. C will cancel out. That means investments should be equal to savings at the point of equilibrium. So जब equilibrium होगा तब investments और savings भी equal होने चाहिए. Okay, so now let's see how it works in a two sector model. So ये point जो आप देख रहे हो E point, इसमें क्या है? Investments I0 है. Investments अगर आप देखोगे all throughout एक level पे है investments. That means you remember we had shared investments किस पे depend करता है? Investments depend on rate of interest. अगर rate of interest ज्यादा होगा तो investments कम होंगे. Isn't it? So इस केस में because हम इनकम की बात कर रहे हैं तो इनकम पे इन्वेस्टमेंट्स डिपेंड नहीं करेगा. इन्वेस्टमेंट्स डिपेंड्स ऑन रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट बिकॉज एक्सोजीनियस फैक्टर है. तो इसीलिए इन्वेस्टमेंट जो है पैरेलल है एक्स एक्सिस की. ओके, इन्वेस्टमेंट्स ऑल थ्रू आउट सेम है. ओके, इन्वेस्टमेंट्स. अब lower panel is establishing relationship between investments and savings and upper panel is establishing relationship between aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Okay, so this case you see this C plus S, this is Y, aggregate supply. Okay, and this C plus I is aggregate demand. Okay, and this C is only consumption demand. C plus I is two sector model. This is two sector model where we are talking about consumption and investment, that is corporate and household. So this is consumption and investment demand, two sector model, and here this is aggregate supply. अब इस ग्राफ में अगर आप देखें upper panel में, this is the consumption curve. Now consumption curve is what? Is equal to A plus B YD. You remember? Consumption function. Consumption function is autonomous consumption, marginal propensity to consume, which is dependent on disposable income. So this is the consumption function. Just as the income बढ़ रही है, consumption बढ़ रहा है, but it is increasing less than the increase in income beyond this point. Y1. Before Y1, it is this savings. ये देख रहे हो आप, ये this savings. Okay, so यहाँ पे savings come. Now, if your point at Y1 and economy is performing at point A, and what is this CI, C plus I? C plus I is consumption and investment demand. अब केवल household अगर demand करेंगे तो it will be on the lower side. but this is the total demand created by households and corporate. So definitely ये higher level पे होगी. This demand will be on a higher level. So C plus I is always in the higher level as compared to C, because consumption demand केवल household की demand है. और C plus I households plus corporate की demand है. So definitely ये higher level पे होगी. So that is why you can see that the corporate demand and the household demand together is this one. So this is aggregate demand. This is aggregate supply. Now, if you see left side of E, at E, it is equilibrium because aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply. Where it is at equilibrium, investments is also equal to savings. So at equilibrium, aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply, and at equilibrium, investments are equal to savings. So that is point E in this case. Okay, economy is at equilibrium. But to the left of E, left side of E, if you see that investments are more and savings is less. Investment is more and savings is less. What it means? What it means? Investments are more, savings are less. That means if investments are more and savings are less, corporate have invested more. Invested more means they have produced more. I'm sorry. In the lower panel, to the left side of E, if you see, investments are greater than savings. What it means? It means that corporate have thought about that the consumers will be having demand and they have produced surplus. So they have produced more, and overall demand, actual demand by household is less. And corporate have produced surplus. So what will happen in that case? The corporate will not be producing further because they know they have produced surplus till the demand increases in the economy. So here, savings are less and investments are more. And that is why you see here, aggregate supply is more than aggregate demand. So since corporate have produced more, they will not go for further production, because if they produce further, that means that they will have more inventories piled up. So when investment increases and the supplies and the demand is not created, then the inventories will increase. Inventories increases means they'll stop the production, because till the time inventories are sold, जब तक inventories बिक नहीं जाती हैं, for the production नहीं करेंगे. So that means employment will reduce. Employment reduces means income will reduce in the economy. But अगर investments और इस point पे जब consumption will be equal to investments or the aggregate demand will be equal to aggregate supply, investments will be equal to savings. At this point, that means when there is equilibrium, that means there's no surplus aggregate demand, there's no surplus aggregate supply. These two are equal, and this will be equal at the point of E, where investments will be equal to savings. अगर आप राइट साइड देखें, इसके राइट साइड में क्या हो रहा है? सेविंग्स आर मोर, investments are less. That means corporate have anticipated that the demand will not increase, and that is why they are investing less. They are producing less. They are producing less. That means what will happen in the economy? They have already produced surplus. So if you see on the right side of this E, this one, this is what is there. Income has increased, but overall supply is more than the demand in the economy. Since the demand is more, since the demand is less and the supply is more, what will happen? There will be surplus. So the corporate will stop. Since they are producing less, so this will decrease. This will decrease because corporate are investing less. Investing less means they are creating less job. Less job means income will decrease and the economy will move back to the initial position. So economy may shift to left, economy may shift to right, but then finally it will come back to the equilibrium where savings is equal to investments. And why this gap happens? This gap happens because investments are based on the demand, accented demand of the household sector. If consumers' demand is not as per the planned investments, then there will be surplus production that will be to the right side of the equilibrium. And if the demand is more and the consumption is less, then what will happen? The corporate will start investments. Because if corporate will start investments, then the employment will increase. Employment will increase means output will increase. Output increases means the purchasing power increases and the economy will move. So when the demand is more, aggregate demand is more than aggregate supply, what will happen in this case? Output will increase. Income will increase. When aggregate supply is greater than aggregate demand, what will happen? Output will decrease, income will decrease, and the economy will move back to the equilibrium. So short-term economy may be having surplus of aggregate demand, excess of aggregate demand, or may have deficit of aggregate demand in the short term, and the equilibrium will change, but at the equilibrium, investments will be equal to savings. If investments are greater than savings, that means you are to the left side. That means the economy should grow. And if economy will grow, that means there is aggregate demand is less than the aggregate supply. So aggregate demand should increase. How long aggregate demand will increase? Till the time aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply. That means if this is a scenario, income in the country will increase. Employment in the country will increase. Output in the country will increase. But if investments are less than savings, what will happen in the country? Income will decrease, output will decrease, employment in the country will decrease, and the economy will move back from Y to Y0. So what you understand through this is that economy may be performing to the left of equilibrium, economy may be performing to the right of equilibrium, but once inventory of the corporate increases or decreases, accordingly, the economy will move back to the equilibrium position. If you are to the right of E side, equilibrium, right of E, that means inventories will be more, and since inventory is more, then in that case, corporate will stop production. The corporate will stop production. That means they'll stop till the time inventories get absorbed. Okay, जब surplus production हो जाता है economy में, तो corporate क्या करेंगे? Further production नहीं करेंगे जब तक कि उनकी inventories sold off नहीं हो जाती है. And once inventories are sold off, then only they'll go for further production. Okay, so this is how it works. So this is clear, I hope so, to all of you. So what you have to remember as per the concept of equilibrium, aggregate demand and aggregate supply proposed by Keynes, you have to keep it in mind that aggregate demand will not always be equal to aggregate supply. We have seen to the left of it, to the equilibrium, and to the right of equilibrium, aggregate demand was not equal to aggregate supply. Aggregate demand depends on what households plan to consume and to save. How much household decide to spend on consumption and to spend on savings. Aggregate supply depends on what? How much producers plan to produce. These are two different players. Producers think about consumer, household, how much they want to buy, and consumers they decide based on their income and preference for spending. So these are two different players, and that is why it becomes very difficult for corporate to know the exact demand created by consumers or the household sector, and that's why there is gap between the aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Aggregate demand और aggregate supply में gap क्यों होता है? क्योंकि हाउसहोल्ड जो है वो डिमांड क्रिएट करते हैं और कॉर्पोरेट जो है वो हाउसहोल्ड की डिमांड को एंटिसिपेट करके प्रोडक्शन करते हैं. अब दोनों अलग अलग हैं प्लेयर्स, इसीलिए हो सकता है कि कभी कभी कॉर्पोरेट का एस्टिमेशन रॉन्ग हो जाए कि हाँ इतनी डिमांड होगी और उसके अकॉर्डिंगली वो सरप्लस प्रोडक्शन कर दें. अगर वो सरप्लस प्रोडक्शन कर देंगे तो उनके पास इन्वेंट्रीज बढ़ जाएंगी. इन्वेंट्रीज बढ़ जाएंगी तो वो प्रोडक्शन कम करेंगे मीन्स जॉब एम्प्लॉयमेंट कम हो जाएगा, इनकम कम हो जाएगी और इकोनॉमी बैक ऑन ट्रैक आ जाएगी. तो अगर एग्रीगेट सप्लाई ज्यादा होगी एज कंपेयर टू एग्रीगेट डिमांड तो क्या होगा? इकोनॉमी में आउटपुट कम होगा. आउटपुट विल स्टार्ट डिक्रीज द आउटपुट बिकॉज इन्वेंट्रीज बढ़ जाएंगी ना. इन्वेंट्रीज बढ़ जाएगी, जब तक वो खत्म नहीं होंगी तब तक आप फर्दर प्रोडक्शन नहीं करोगे. आउटपुट विल डिक्रीज, एम्प्लॉयमेंट विल डिक्रीज, income will decrease and economy will be back at equilibrium. अगर एग्रीगेट डिमांड ज्यादा है एग्रीगेट सप्लाई से तो क्या होगा? तो इन्वेंट्रीज कम हो जाएंगी, प्रोडक्शन बढ़ जाएगा, एम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ जाएगी, इनकम बढ़ जाएगी और ये सरप्लस कंज्यूम हो जाएगा. ओके, सो दिस इज हाउ. सो एग्रीगेट सप्लाई रिप्रेजेंट्स एग्रीगेट वैल्यू एक्सपेक्टेड बाय द बिजनेस फर्म्स. कितना कंज्यूमर्स डिमांड करेंगे उसके अकॉर्डिंगली वो प्रोडक्शन करेंगे और एग्रीगेट डिमांड represents the realized value. Actually consumers household sector ने कितना डिमांड किया, दोनों में गैप होने की वजह से equilibrium will not always be at C plus I equal to C plus S. So this is what Keynes said about. So consumers का consumption plan जरूरी नहीं है कि producers के production plan से match करे. Consumers कुछ अपने पर्सपेक्टिव से सोचेंगे और प्रोड्यूसर्स अपने पर्सपेक्टिव से सोचेंगे कि कंज्यूमर्स डिमांड करेंगे. अगर दोनों में गैप होगा तो equilibrium will not be where aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply. Okay. So what is deflationary gap? Deflationary gap, when we talk about deflationary gap, deflation क्या होगा? Deficit demand. Deficit demand means जो actual demand चाहिए इकोनॉमी में उससे डिमांड कम है. Deficit demand, the demand which is actual demand जो होनी चाहिए उससे कम है. So that is known as deficit demand or deflationary gap. अब suppose corporate have anticipated that the demand will be of 100 units. उन्होंने प्रोडक्शन कर दिया 100 units का, anticipating that consumers will be demanding 100 units. अब जो actual demand है मार्केट में वो 80 units की है by households. Since the demand is of 80 units and the production is of 100 units, so what is the scenario here? So equilibrium is at which point? Actual equilibrium is here. Okay, economy is operating at this level, but actually कहाँ होना चाहिए था? At F. Or overall output in the economy is how much? Overall output in the economy is OQ dash. Okay, output in the economy कितना है? OQ dash. But actual demand कितनी है market में? This one C plus I1. Okay, so C plus I0. So the demand in the economy is this. So equilibrium actually established क्या हुआ है? E पर. Output कितना है? Income कितनी है? OM. So, but it should be where? Ideally, it should be where? At OQ dash, OQ strip. Because at this point, aggregate demand will be equal to aggregate supply. But abhi, since aggregate demand is less, how much aggregate demand is less? By FG. This is the actual demand in the market. And this is the required demand. required demand. Okay, make it again. So इस ग्राफ में आप देख रहे हो x axis depicting what output and income, y axis is depicting aggregate demand. Aggregate demand is two sector model में C plus I. Okay, अब इस केस में ये जो y है, ये जो 45 डिग्री लाइन है, this is y, this is aggregate supply, and this aggregate supply is equal to aggregate demand. अब you see there are two equilibrium points, one is at point E, other is at point F. At point E, how much is output and income? OM. Okay. And what is aggregate demand? Aggregate demand is C plus I0. This is aggregate demand. Actual should be where? Actual aggregate demand should be, this is the actual, what required aggregate demand is how much? जो होना चाहिए ideally economy में, aggregate demand should be C plus I1. C plus I1 is greater than C plus I0. That means FG is deficit demand. इतनी डिमांड इकोनॉमी में कम है, इसीलिए आउटपुट कम है, इनकम कम है. सो डिफ्लेशनरी में क्या होगा? डिफ्लेशन में एक्चुअल डिमांड will be less than required demand. Since the actual demand is less than the required demand, there will be unemployment. There will be low level of income. And as Keynes proposed that if there is deficit demand or deflationary gap, then who has to take the charge? Government. If, and in this case, we are not talking about corporate, we are not talking about government. So this is only two sector model. So अब इस केस में डिफ्लेशन की वजह से इक्विलिब्रियम कहाँ होगा? E पॉइंट पे. आइडियली कहाँ होना चाहिए था? F पॉइंट पे. So this is the level of gap here. FG जो है gap है. Okay, so this is deflationary gap. Actual required. Output कम होगा, income कम होगी, because aggregate demand is less than the required demand. Inflationary gap में opposite होगा. Inflationary gap में क्या होगा? What will happen in inflationary gap? Inflationary gap में you see, this is the level of full employment. यहाँ पर ideally all people are those who want to work and economy can absorb all those people is full employment. यहाँ पे F point पर full employment है. This is aggregate supply, this is aggregate demand. So actual required aggregate demand कितनी होनी चाहिए? C plus I. To have equilibrium at point F, output कितना होना चाहिए? OQ asterisk, OQ asterisk, and 1 second. So this is actual should be how much? Actual should be OQ asterisk because यहाँ पे full employment है. But actually economy कहाँ perform कर रही है? OM पर. Why economy is performing at OM? Because there's excess demand. So actual demand is greater than required demand. I'll write it there. So in inflationary gap, what do you see? That the full employment is at OQ asterisk. That means all the resources are optimally utilized. So the required demand should be how much? C plus I1. This should be the required demand. But actual aggregate demand is how much? C plus I0. Now, since actual aggregate demand is greater than the required aggregate demand, what will happen? Since households are demanding more, corporate are producing less. So what will corporate do in that case? And the resources are optimally utilized. So this FG is excess demand. And because of this excess demand, economy, it will lead to inflation in the economy. Because production is less and aggregate demand is more. And this will lead to what? Companies will start producing more. If they produce more, since the resources are fully utilized, people have to work overtime, machines will be overutilized, friction will be more. What will happen because of that? The cost will increase. Overall prices will further increase. And because of the increase in the prices, the cost of production will increase at a faster pace. So this leads to inflation in the economy, and the overall price in the economy will increase. Inflation gap. Once the price starts increasing, what will happen because of increase in price? People will not be able to afford at a high price. Consumption will start decreasing. And once the consumption starts decreasing, aggregate demand starts decreasing. And the actual aggregate demand is equal to required aggregate demand at OF. So this is inflationary gap and deflationary gap in a two-sector model. Okay, so this is the inflationary gap and deflationary gap in two-sector model. Now, I suppose some questions are given to you. So how will you address these questions? So the question given to you is that calculate marginal propensity to consume and marginal propensity to save. They have given you national income. National income is how much? 2,500. Autonomous consumption expenditure is 300 and investment expenditure is 100. So you know that Y is equal to C plus I. Okay, C you know is equal to A plus B YB. Okay, so they have given you value of I, they have given you value of Y, and they have given you this autonomous consumption. They have given you autonomous consumption. Now you have to find out B in this case. Okay, so how will you find out B in this case? B, YD, we'll take it as Y only. So what you do, you write 2,500 is equal to A is how much? 300 plus B, YD is 2,500 and plus I is 100. So once you substitute this, you will get the value here at equilibrium. At equilibrium, national income, you have to find out the marginal propensity to consume. So marginal propensity to consume will be, once you get consumption, then you can find out delta C by delta Y, marginal propensity. And marginal propensity to consume is what? B. Once you get the value of B, this is MPC. Okay, so you can get the value of B. So that is 2,500 is equal to 300 plus B, 2,500 plus 100. You will get value of B. Once you get the value of B, that will be marginal propensity to consume. 0.8, I believe so. Okay. Then the autonomous consumption. What is autonomous consumption? Autonomous consumption is A. Autonomous consumption is given 100. Marginal propensity to save they have given. Marginal propensity to save is 0.2 and investment expenditure they have given. So how will you find out? So in this case, first case, the value of B is 0.84. Okay. In this case, value of B is 0.84. And in the second case, they have given you autonomous consumption, marginal to save, and investment expenditure. They are asking you national income. National income Y is equal to C plus I. Okay. But before we go for C plus I, we know that marginal autonomous consumption they have given C is equal to A plus B by D. Now they have given you A. A is how much? 100. You have to find out B. B is marginal propensity to consume. They have given you marginal propensity to save. You know MPC plus MPS is equal to 1. They have given you MPS. MPS is 0.2 plus MPC is equal to 1. So that means MPC is 0.8. So you have value of MPC 0.8. So you substitute here Y is equal to 100 plus 0.8 Y plus I is how much? 200. So I you have 200. So that means Y is equal to 0.8 Y plus 300. Y minus 0.8 Y is equal to 300. And 0.2 Y is equal to 300. And Y is equal to 300 by 0.2. That is equal to 1500. So Y value will be 1500. So this is how. So basically, if you know the formulas, if you know the concept, you can solve these questions with ease. Okay. So this is how questions can be addressed. So this is what we have done today. I'll share once again with you people what we have discussed since we have not taken a break today. So that is why at 4:45 we have finished. But I'll just discuss once again what are the concepts we have discussed till now, so that next class when we meet 3-sector model, 4-sector model, it becomes easy for you to understand. 3-sector model we will be taking government, and in 4-sector we will be taking rest of the world into consideration. So this chapter is about determination of income, output, and employment. We had shared what is Great Depression. Great Depression is overall aggregate demand in the economy decreased, and this decrease in the aggregate demand resulted in what? Jobs were not there, income was not there, employment was not there, growth was not there, and that resulted in country's downfall. And that is why John Maynard Keynes, in 1936, he proposed through his book, General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, that government plays very important role. If government will intervene, that will help the economy to be back on track. And that is why government started investing. And once the government started investing, it created positive sentiment. If government शुरू कर दिया investment, so corporate का confidence boost हुआ, जिसकी वजह से उन्होंने भी investment start किया, और gradually investment बढ़ने से jobs बढ़े, job बढ़ने से income मिली, और income बढ़ने से economy back on track आ गई. They took care about the funding of banks also. So banks को भी उन्होंने revive किया, और इस तरह से इकोनॉमी बैक ऑन ट्रैक आ गई, बिकॉज जॉन मेनार्ड किन्स ने इंपॉर्टेंस दिया कंजम्पशन को और इन्वेस्टमेंट्स को बताया एक्सोजीनियस फैक्टर्स पे डिपेंड. सो शॉर्ट टर्म में व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट इज दैट कंजम्पशन डिमांड, और कंजम्पशन डिमांड डिपेंड किस पे करती है? इनकम पर डिपेंड करती है, और इनकम के ऊपर कंजम्पशन डिमांड इज नॉट ओनली डिपेंडेंट बट इट आल्सो डिपेंड्स ऑन अदर फैक्टर्स. सर्टेन consumption of yours is not dependent on income because वो एक आपकी लाइफस्टाइल है, वो आपकी बेसिक नीड है जो आपको फुलफिल करनी है. सो वो अगर इनकम नहीं भी होगी तब भी आप कंजम्पशन करेंगे. दिस कैटेगरी ऑफ कंजम्पशन को किन्स ने डिफाइन किया एज ऑटोनॉमस कंजम्पशन. दिस ऑटोनॉमस कंजम्पशन इज नॉट डिपेंडेंट ऑन इनकम बट इट इज ऑलवेज देयर इवन एट जीरो लेवल ऑफ इनकम, बिकॉज कुछ बेसिक नीड्स आपको हमेशा फुलफिल करनी है. किन्स, द वन हु इज कंसिडर्ड एज फादर ऑफ मैक्रोइकोनॉमिक्स, उन्होंने बताया रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन कंजम्पशन और इनकम की, और उन्होंने कंजम्पशन फंक्शन इंट्रोड्यूस किया. इस कंजम्पशन फंक्शन में दो चीजें बताई, एक ऑटोनॉमस कंजम्पशन और एक मार्जिनल प्रोपेंसिटी टू कंज्यूम. ऑटोनॉमस कंजम्पशन जो है, दिस इज अ कंजम्पशन व्हिच इज इवन एट जीरो लेवल ऑफ इनकम, और ये रिजल्ट करता है डिस सेविंग्स में. बिकॉज आपको या तो पास सेविंग से विड्रॉ करना पड़ता है या आपको बोरो करना पड़ता है। बट बी डिपेंड्स ऑन इनकम। जितनी ज्यादा इनकम बढ़ेगी उतना ज्यादा कंजम्पशन बढ़ेगा। बट ये जो कंजम्पशन बढ़ेगा वो डेफिनेटली विल बी लेस देन इंक्रीज इन इनकम। इसीलिए बी जो है, मार्जिनल प्रोपेंसिटी टू कंज्यूम, होता है चेंज इन कंजम्पशन टू चेंज इन इनकम, और इसकी वैल्यू हमेशा लेस देन 1 होती है। बिकॉज एज पर किन्स, क्योंकि जो भी इनकम बढ़ती है वो उतना पूरा प्रोपोर्शन आप कंजम्पशन में स्पेंड नहीं कर देते हैं, कुछ परसेंटेज आप डेफिनेटली सेव करते हैं। सो जो इनकम है या तो वो कंज्यूम होगी या सेव होगी। और दूसरा आपने पढ़ा है कि डिमांड जो होती है वो कंजम्पशन और इन्वेस्टमेंट्स के थ्रू क्रिएट होती है। सो लिक्विडिटी प्रेफरेंस कॉन्सेप्ट किन्स ने बताया, जिसको हम आगे पढ़ेंगे। एग्रीगेट डिमांड जो है, एग्रीगेट डिमांड में जो कंज्यूमर डिमांड करते हैं वो मनी का डिमांड 3 पैरामीटर्स के लिए करते हैं। वन, टू एक्सचेंज गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज। टू एक्सचेंज गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज यू हैव टू हैव लिक्विड मनी। आपके पास लिक्विड मनी होना चाहिए जिससे कि आप अपनी डिमांड को फुलफिल कर सकते हैं। दूसरा, सेविंग्स। दिस इज नोन एज प्रिकॉशनरी मॉडल। जब आप अपनी लिक्विडिटी डिमांड पूरी कर लेते हैं तब आप सेविंग्स के लिए सोचते हैं। उसके ऊपर भी अगर कुछ बचता है तो देन यू गो फॉर प्रिकॉशनरी मोटिव। प्रिकॉशनरी मोटिव जहां आप इन्वेस्टमेंट्स करते हैं। सो लिक्विड मनी, कितना आप लिक्विड मनी डिपेंड करता है कि आप कितना कंजम्पशन करना चाहते हैं। द मोर यू वांट टू कंज्यूम, मोर लिक्विड यू विल कीप। सो लिक्विडिटी प्रेफरेंस डिसाइड करती है कि अगर आप ज्यादा पैसा रखते हैं कैश में तो आप उतना ज्यादा डिमांड ओवरऑल इकोनॉमी में पड़ेगी। If the demand in the overall in the economy increases more than investments in the economy, तो क्या होगा? इन्वेस्टमेंट्स कम है और डिमांड ज्यादा बढ़ गई तो इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ेगा। And if inflation increases in the economy, what will happen if inflation increases in the economy? Then in that case, overall cost of borrowings बढ़ जाएंगी, कंज्यूमर्स के लिए भी परचेसिंग पावर कम हो जाएगी। इसीलिए फिर मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी के थ्रू आरबीआई इंटरवीन करेगा बाय इंक्रीजिंग इंटरेस्ट रेट्स। सो अगर इन्फ्लेशन होगा तो इंटरेस्ट रेट का रोल होगा लिक्विडिटी प्रेफरेंस में। देन एक्सपेक्टेशंस पे डिपेंड करता है कितना प्रोडक्शन होगा। अगर कॉर्पोरेट दे एक्सपेक्ट कि डिमांड ज्यादा होगी तो दे विल प्रोड्यूस मोर। अगर कॉर्पोरेट की एक्सपेक्टेशंस कंज्यूमर्स के कैलकुलेशंस के रिस्पेक्ट में, अगर कॉर्पोरेट ने एक्सपेक्ट किया कि डिमांड ज्यादा होगी और उन्होंने प्रोडक्शन ज्यादा कर दिया, बट कंज्यूमर्स ने डिमांड, रियल डिमांड उनकी कम है एज पर द प्लान इन्वेस्टमेंट्स, तो क्या होगा? इन्वेंट्रीज बढ़ जाएंगी। इन्वेंट्रीज बढ़ने से क्या होगा? प्रोडक्शन सरप्लस होगा और इसीलिए उसमें ओवरऑल जॉब्स की अपॉर्चुनिटीज कम हो जाएंगी। जॉब की अपॉर्चुनिटीज कम होने से क्या होगा कि एम्प्लॉयमेंट कम होगा, एम्प्लॉयमेंट कम होगा, इनकम कम होगा। देन वी हैड शेयर टू सेक्टर मॉडल। टू सेक्टर मॉडल में हमने बात किया हाउस होल्ड्स और फर्म्स की। वी हैव स्पोकन अबाउट मनी फ्लो एंड रियल फ्लो। मनी फ्लो क्या है? आउटर सर्कल में है, जहां पर कंज्यूमर्स गुड्स बाय एंड सर्विस के करने के लिए फर्म्स को पेमेंट करते हैं। उसी तरह से फर्म्स जो होती हैं हाउस होल्ड्स को पे करती हैं फॉर रेंडरिंग देयर सर्विसेज। तो देर आर actually you're right. So फर्म्स एंड हाउस होल्ड्स इंटरैक्ट कैसे करते हैं? दो तरीके से इंटरैक्ट करते हैं, एक रियल फ्लो में, एक मनी फ्लो में। मनी फ्लो में क्या होगा? जब मॉनेटरी ट्रांजैक्शंस होंगे फ्रॉम फर्म्स टू हाउस होल्ड इन टर्म्स ऑफ फैक्टर पेमेंट्स। फैक्टर्स क्या होते हैं प्रोडक्शन के? लैंड, लेबर एंड कैपिटल एंड एंटरप्रेन्योर। और दे लैंड को क्या मिलेगा? रेंट मिलेगा। अगर एंटरप्रेन्योर अपना लैंड यूज कर रहा है तो वो क्या सैक्रिफाइस कर रहा है? रेंट सैक्रिफाइस कर रहा है। तो हम क्या इंक्लूड करेंगे? इम्प्यूटेड रेंट इंक्लूड करेंगे। अगर कैपिटल फर्म अपना कैपिटल यूज कर रहा है तो वो क्या फॉरगो कर रहा है? इंटरेस्ट फॉरगो कर रहा है, तो विल इंक्लूड imputed interest also. So this is what is the relationship between household and firms, and it is assumed that in a circular flow there is whatever households they spend, firms they produce goods, and these goods are purchased by households in the same quantity, and whatever firms give them payments, these payments are utilized by households to buy goods and services. So it's a complete circle, which is a two-sector model, which is there. So to start with, we have started. Yes, yes, Richard. Yes, you're right, Vedant. Okay, so this is how money flow and real flow हमने discuss किया. Then you have concept of ex ante consumption and ex ante investments. Corporate डिसाइड करते हैं अपना प्लान इन्वेस्टमेंट बेस्ड ऑन कंज्यूमर्स का expected demand क्या होगा. And that is why Keynes said that in the short term, what plays important role is consumption rather than investment. और इसीलिए हमने इसमें all throughout consumption पे ज्यादा emphasis दिया as compared to investments. Consumption demand जो है it depends on disposable income, and this disposable income can be disposable income आपको पता है क्या होती है. Disposable income में transfer payments और it is about income which is after deducting all your tax and non-tax liabilities जो आपके पास total income dispose of करने के लिए होती है, जिसका आपके पास ऑप्शन होता है. आप उसको कंजम्पशन में भी यूज कर सकते हैं, आप उसको सेविंग्स में भी डाल सकते हैं. सो कंजम्पशन अगर आप कर रहे हैं तो उस केस में कंजम्पशन ऑटोनमस कंजम्पशन होगा और marginal propensity to consume होगा. Marginal propensity to consume will be definitely greater than 0 और less than 1 इसकी वैल्यू होती है as per Keynes. हमने एवरेज प्रोपेंसिटी टू कंज्यूम और मार्जिनल प्रोपेंसिटी टू कंज्यूम रिलेशनशिप स्टैब्लिश किया. आपको क्वेश्चंस आ सकते हैं अगर आपको इनकम और कंजम्पशन दिया है और आपको एपीसी और एमपीसी फाइंड आउट करना है. सो आई होप आप फाइंड आउट कर सकते हैं. यू नो हाउ टू कैलकुलेट एमपीसी. एमपीसी का रिलेशनशिप इनकम और कंजम्पशन से होता है. अगर इनकम इंक्रीज हो रहा है 100 to 200, सो कंजम्पशन कितना बढ़ रहा है 75. So consumption is increasing by 75 and income is increasing by 100. So 75 by 100 will be MPC. So MPC आप फाइंड आउट कर सकते हैं. MPC की वैल्यू आप देखोगे हमेशा इट विल बी लेस देन 1. अगर 75 MPC है तो मतलब क्या है इसका कि अगर इनकम 1% इंक्रीज हो रही है तो 0.75% कंजम्पशन भी जा रहा है. ओके, सो दैट मीन्स 0.25 सेविंग्स हो रही है. That is why we say MPC plus MPS is equal to 1. Or we also say that MPS will be equal to 1 minus MPC. Because अगर आप spend नहीं कर रहे हैं तो आप save करेंगे. Okay, we have already established relationship between income and savings and consumption. This we have shared. This savings, investments or savings और एग्रीगेट डिमांड. 45 डिग्री लाइन का क्या सिग्निफिकेंस है? 45 degree line is the line, this aggregate supply line, which divides this into equal halves. That means इस लाइन पर हर पॉइंट पर एग्रीगेट डिमांड इक्वल टू एग्रीगेट सप्लाई होगी इस लाइन पर. where y this line which you see here is a 45 degree line which segregates this graph into equal halves. That means इसके हर पॉइंट पे एग्रीगेट डिमांड होगी इक्वल टू एग्रीगेट सप्लाई. बट एक्चुअली यहाँ पे होगी या इकोनॉमी यहाँ पे परफॉर्म कर रही होगी. दैट मीन्स जो एग्रीगेट डिमांड से ज्यादा हो सकता है एग्रीगेट सप्लाई या कम हो सकता है और रिस्पेक्टिवली उसका इम्पैक्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट्स पे पड़ेगा. सो वी हैव शेयर्ड दिस. वी हैव डन सम न्यूमेरिकल्स आल्सो. We have established relationship between equilibrium aggregate supply and aggregate demand. और आप समझ गए कि कंजम्पशन डिमांड कम होगी जब कॉर्पोरेट और इन्वेस्टमेंट्स की डिमांड होगी तो वो डेफिनेटली हायर होगी. सो दिस इज द एग्रीगेट डिमांड ऑफ टू सेक्टर. दिस इज द डिमांड ऑफ ओनली कंजम्पशन एंड दिस इज एग्रीगेट सप्लाई. और किन्स ने क्या कहा? जरूरी नहीं है कि एग्रीगेट सप्लाई एग्रीगेट डिमांड जहां पे इक्वल होगी वहां पे इक्विलिब्रियम होगा. उससे ऊपर या उसके लेफ्ट या उसके राइट साइड में इक्विलिब्रियम हो सकता है. जो हमने शेयर किया डिफ्लेशनरी गैप ऑफ इन्फ्लेशनरी गैप. अगर डिफ्लेशन होगा तो दैट मीन्स एक्चुअल डिमांड कम है और रिक्वायर्ड डिमांड ज्यादा है. इस केस में ओवरऑल प्राइसेस कम हो जाएंगी. और इन्फ्लेशन में क्या होगा? एक्चुअल डिमांड ज्यादा है देन द रिक्वायर्ड डिमांड, सो प्राइसेस बढ़ जाएंगी. प्राइसेस बढ़ने से क्या होगा? ओवरऑल कॉस्ट ऑफ बोरिंग्स बढ़ जाएगी, इनकम कम हो जाएगी, रियल इनकम कम हो जाएगी. एंड दैट इज व्हाई द इकोनॉमी विल मूव बैक फ्रॉम ओएम टू ओक्यू डैश. Then we have done some numerical also, and so this all for this class, and we'll meet in the next class when we talk about three sector model and four sector model. So keep reading and keep learning. Okay. Okay, thanks. Sir, I'm winding up now. Yes, yes. Okay, thanks.